All right, sorry for the technical glitches here. So welcome to the 6th Annual Global Neuroscience Institute Conference. So what you're gonna see for the next 3 days is this hasn't really been done before, so as you can see, we're finally underway. This is gonna be a live format for 3 days. We're not gonna have people just droning on and reading off of PowerPoint slides. And what the most exciting thing is this is going to be an interactive 3 days. So really you, the participant, is going to be involved, much more so than you would be at an average conference where you have to raise a hand and maybe not be comfortable asking questions. So we're going to start the day off with kind of an overview of where we are, where we're going. And the theme of this year's conference is getting back to basics. And I know many of the participants here are some of our partners that have been with us a long time and some of our partners that are newer. And so really what we want to do is be able to, we're going to talk about cutting edge things, but we're also going to talk about, how to do a basic neurologic exam, what to do after you give IV TPA and your patient crashes. These are the things that I think we don't really see at a lot of conferences. It's more look at the before and look at the after. So we're really going to focus on that. And again, I can't emphasize enough that we really want you, the participant, to be part of this process. So as far as some housekeeping issues before we get going, please give your session feedback at the end of each session so that you can receive your CME and CEU credits, and visit the vendor sections. All the talks are going to be incorporating some cutting edge technology, devices that we use, services that we use, and you're going to be able to have direct interaction with these industry leaders at the end of each session. And then please go to the community section, network with your colleagues, talk to other people at other hospitals, and talk about what they're doing and work together so that we can incorporate what we're going to be doing for the next 3 days across all the systems and really help each other. As far as questions, go to the blue tab on the session Q&A and not the chat section to ask a question. So if you want to ask any question at all, any of the panelists, and actually we encourage you to, because we have a moderator for each session who will be able to incorporate your questions and talk live on the spot and be able to answer your questions. And as far as platform, we suggest that you use Google Chrome. It's a lot less wonkier than some of the other platforms. So with that, I want to start the session off is talking about the new neurosciences. The concept of where we're going for the next, hopefully 5 to 10 years, is changing the platform of neurosciences. We've been doing this at GNI for 10 years. We've been very dedicated to this. And one of the analogies that I like to use is the history of the telephone. I mean, if we look at where we've gone, and most of us out there have been around long enough to remember the telephone that just used to be, in your kitchen or living room with a long cord that you kind of stretched out to go to another room to have privacy, up to where we are now. And if you look at the telephone, it's not that long ago that it was invented. I mean, this is in the mid 1800s where, we had our first ability to talk to people at a remote location. And then over time, what's ended up happening is we've adapted the telephone, not based on technology. The technology's probably been there since the mid 1800s. The technology has been driven by the consumer. So the next step in the telephone after invention was going from a one-line system to a multiple line system so that you could talk to multiple people without having one relay operator. And then the big breakthrough was in the 1980s with cellular phones. This is something that has been, to this day, a major breakthrough, to be able to be in a remote section and be able to talk to somebody over radio waves. And if you told somebody that that was going to happen in the 1800s, they probably would have thought that we'd be flying around in spaceships as well. But this reality is really the technical innovations being incorporated into a need. And here's today, and I promise all of this is going to come back to the end of the talk and wrap things up with where we need to be going in healthcare, but particularly in neurosciences. We now have smartphones where you can check during the election, what the latest votes are. You can find out what the stock exchanges in Hong Kong up to the minute. You can talk to a relative in another country. You can FaceTime with them. So this technology is really something that we need to start bringing towards healthcare, and particularly in neurosciences. And I think what you're going to see is that we're there, but we need that push to do it. And the current systems, the current way we're working in silos, it's never going to happen. So, the good news is that we have technology that we don't know what to do with. For the first time in the history of healthcare, we now have technology that we're trying to figure out how to use it, as opposed to not that long ago, we were looking for cures for diseases. We were looking for ways to get into certain parts of the brain in a less invasive way or non-invasive way, but we just didn't have the technology. So we've got to really rethink what we're doing with technology and really rethink our relationship with industry. Because I want to be very clear, every cure, every advancement in healthcare, it's going to be partnered with industry. And anybody that doesn't understand that, I think, is being a little bit naive. It's not at the big universities. It's not at NIH. It's not at a government letter. It's a collaboration with all of you out there, healthcare providers that do what you do every day, and industry who can develop the technologies to help us take better care of our patients. And the other issue that we have to deal with is looking at how we deliver healthcare within the hospitals. We've got to partner better. This is something that I got in my email a couple days ago, and this is Erol's a world-class, wonderful organization. But this is kind of the mentality that hospitals look at, and it's not just physicians. I would say managing healthcare providers, nurses, MAs, techs, EMS, top to bottom. If you touch a patient, how to manage physicians, how to manage healthcare providers. It's a little condescending, but it also misses the point. You don't have to manage us. We need to work together so that we can all have one focus, which is the patient. So, today we're talking about neurosciences. And if we really talk about neurosciences, it's not neurosurgery. It's not just neurology. It's not just mental health, not just neuroimaging, but it's anything that affects the nervous system. And that means that's working with our colleagues in engineering, our colleagues in basic science, our colleagues in psychiatry, neurology, neurosurgery, neuropharmacy, all of these things together. So, why is this such a big issue now? 1 billion patients a year are affected by a neurologic disorder worldwide. And that's an understatement. That doesn't even include mental health. So you can do the math there. It's the leading cause of disability. And as of today, there is no center of excellence that is a freestanding, dedicated system for neurosciences. Now, think about MD Anderson for cancer or Memorial Sloan Kettering. Think about Wills Eye Hospital for ophthalmology. Think about Hospital for Special Surgery for orthopedics. Where's our equivalent for neurosciences? Now, that's not to say that we don't have some great neuroscience centers, but a freestanding, independent think tank. And I think towards the end of certainly today and the next 2 days, I think everybody out there is going to be pretty excited about what's happening. And the most exciting thing is that all of you are part of this. This isn't something that we or they, this is all of us together, working together to deliver the best healthcare for our patients. So, again, I'm going to go through these, but these are just to kind of show the data that neurosciences, not only is it not going away, it's growing. It's eclipsing cardiology. It's certainly eclipsing orthopedics. And none of this includes mental health. None of this is including mental health, where we've done a really, really bad job. So, that's 15% alone of all the medical burden, and that's in the United States. That's more than all cancers combined. Think about that. And think about what we need to be doing with the neurosciences based on that fact. And really, unfortunately, the fact that it's the #1 crippler and killer, we work in silos. And I would bring this out to all of healthcare, but particularly in neurosciences, one of our biggest crutches is that we work in silos. We don't communicate with each other. And I can tell you, most of you out there, and certainly if you're in an academic institution, most people don't even talk to colleagues where they're seeing the same patients on a weekly basis, but they're not communicating. They don't know what patients' studies were done, what plans were. We communicate through an EMR system as opposed to being under one roof together, working together, talking together. And guess what? The patients see that. The patients feel that. Everybody out there has been a patient at some point, myself included, and we've all been victims to this. It doesn't matter how connected you are in healthcare, you are going to be a victim of this type of silo effect. So what I want to talk about in the next 5-10 minutes, and then really kind of get to 30,000 feet, is a little bit of a surprise here. So stroke, you know, we as GNI and a lot of people in the city have been pioneers in the treatment of stroke. It wasn't that long ago where I remember giving lectures trying to convince doctors that we could do something for stroke other than admit the patient to a medical floor and get an MRI in the morning and then send them off to rehab. We've come a long way. The problem is we're sitting on our laurels. And that's really the history. If you look at healthcare, and again, particularly neurosciences, we make this breakthrough and then we sit on it for 10 years instead of pushing the envelope and thinking outside of the box. So for stroke, I'm not going to show you before and afters. I'm not going to show you all these great saves. You've all seen that. You all know that that's out there. That's what everybody's being inundated with. Let's talk about how we can take that technology that we advance the bar with stroke and start looking at it for other things. So this is a typical, you know, not typical, but in most places now, a CT perfusion and a diagnostic cerebral angiogram. This on your left there, this is a CAT scan that's done within 20 seconds that shows, can we save this brain? That area of red that you see, that's telling us that if we open up an artery, we can reperfuse that brain and turn this patient from globally aphasic, meaning they can't speak, they can't understand speech, not move the right side of their body for the rest of their life, to regaining all of those things. And the angiogram, you can see on the right there, that blockage, as that stump right there, is where the clot is. And so, you know, this video is a video that a lot of people have seen. And this is where you can see a wire going up to a vessel here and sucking out a clot. You know, we start in the groin, we go up. You know, timing is another issue. We really used to think about 3 hours, 4 hours. We're not worried about that anymore. This is a landmark paper that we were fortunately to be part of, the Dawn trial, that showed that up to 24 hours, which we've known for a long time, we can help change that outcome and not just say, well, sorry, it was 4 hours from your last symptom, there's nothing we can do. So really what we have to start doing is thinking differently, using our technology. I will tell you as of today, and you're going to hear about it later, we're here at GNI, we're giving IV TPA up to 9 hours. And it's not part of a trial, it's not part of a study. We're doing best practice because the data's out there, they're doing it in Europe, and I can speak for most people that if you or your loved one comes into the emergency room with an acute stroke and there's really good data saying we can give you IV TPA, even though it's after 4.5 hours, and at the very least it's safe and there might be a clear benefit, I think most people would go for that. So, you know, the neurologic emergency room concept, which we're going to talk about later today, you know, this isn't a gimmick. This isn't a marketing tool. This is something we've been doing for 10 years. And what it's doing is triaging these acute patients so that we can deliver better, quicker, and safer care. So let's think outside the box here a little bit. You know, doing endovascular treatment, let's get away from stroke. This is a young child who we saw at St. Christopher's who had, you know, tragically shaken baby syndrome. That big kind of gray, dark gray area you see there is a blood clot that dissolved into a liquefied form and keeps pushing on the brain. These children come back from multiple surgeries to continue to drain, And so we started thinking, we, meaning us and some of our colleagues around the country, about different ways of we can treat this. And what we do know from our endovascular experience is that we see the arteries, that this is an angiogram of that child, where the arteries that go up to the temple and onto the scalp, they're the ones that are feeding this thing and forming this exudate where the fluid slowly leaks out and expands. So by eliminating that, you can see that up on the right top there, that kind of puff up at the top of the scalp, you know, that is something that if we eliminate, which we can do safely and easily, it's a scalp vessel, we might be able to stop that growth. And here's a micro injection of that membrane that we did. And this was, again, the child at St. Christopher's Hospital. This is 1 day. Look at how much smaller it is on the right than the left. that is no surgery. That's just taking that vessel out. And here we are at 8 months, it's completely gone. This is a new way to be thinking about something that we don't have to open up somebody's head, and especially these tragic situations with children. Let's talk about high-grade gliomas. This is a huge black eye in healthcare, oncology, neurosciences, and I would say for me and my colleagues as neurosurgeons, if you are diagnosed with a high-grade glioma, a glioblastoma multiforme, what John McCain passed away from, what Ted Kennedy passed away from, many others, and many of you out there may know people, the outcomes and the treatments have not changed a whole heck of a lot. And I would argue that if you were diagnosed with this 50 years ago, your outcome is going to be almost exactly the same as it is today. And that's a real problem. And what we strongly feel at GNI is it's because we're not pushing the envelope. We're not thinking outside the box. We're too narrowly focused. So let's go back to our same vascular concepts. This is a picture of a high-grade glioma in a very young man. And what you're seeing there is a blood supply. So this is the nutrients, the oxygen, and the blood supply to help these tumor cells grow. So wouldn't it make sense that we deliver chemotherapy and try to tackle that as opposed to giving chemotherapy in someone's arm and having their whole body absorb it and become immunocompromised, have their hair fall out, feel horrible for the last few months of their life, and maybe 20% of it's even getting across. So this is one of the first cases we did. This was the first case done in the region, in New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, or anywhere. So this is a high-grade glioma in a gentleman who underwent multiple treatments. I'm just going to go through these here. And you can see the before and after on the left and on the right. You can see that by injecting chemotherapy directly to that brain tumor, we can melt that away. Are we curing GBM? No. Are we, even extending? We don't know that yet. But what we do know is what we're doing currently, standard of care, doesn't work. We know that. So we've got to move on to different things. And, our next in between sessions, our vendor session after this, one of the vendors is longevity. These are devices that these small companies are coming to the doctors and saying, hey, we have this technology. There's a lot of stuff that we can do here. Help us figure out how we can deliver this. What do you need? What will help you make your patients' outcomes better? What are some of the challenges that you have? So one of the most exciting things in neurosciences right now is functional neurosurgery and functional neurosciences. And you're going to hear a great session on this and some of the really incredible and exciting things that we're able to do. So we can literally put computer chips in the brain and stimulate, inhibit different areas of the brain to affect, the most commonly known tremor for Parkinson's disease. But what we can also do is treat obsessive compulsive disease. There are several trials going on now for opioid addiction, spasticity. This is a new frontier. And neuroprosthetics is really where we need to be going. So this is a small chip, and I'm sorry if any of you are eating your breakfast now. This is a really smaller than a half size of a postage stamp array that we put on the brain to stimulate the cortex, and then we can send these electrodes to different parts of the body or stimulate it to affect different parts of the body. And this is a video. This woman right here is, let me see if we can get this up. That's okay. So what we can do is we can control our arms and our legs just by thinking. We can send the impulses from the brain to a prosthetic arm, to a prosthetic leg. It really is remarkable what we're able to do. So if you look at, we can go past the videos here. And if you look at neuroplastics, so what is neuroplastics? Neuroplastics did not exist 2 years ago. This is something that a brilliant plastic surgeon at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Chad Gordon, worked a lot with neurosurgeons, said, this is kind of stupid. I'm in my silo, you're in your silo, we're working all together. Let's work together so I can do opening and closing. I can get a better cosmetic result for these wonderful surgeries you're doing where you're taking out these big brain tumors. People are in trauma, you're saving their brain, but then their face is drooping, they have shallow dentations in their skull. But then he went to the next level and started thinking, you know, there's a lot more I can do. He started looking at what the functional neurosurgeons are doing and what other people are doing, and said, I can put things into a very small area and implant them in the brain for you. So that was the genesis of neuroplastics. And we're really honored to be working with them. And one of the things that we're doing is this is called a Invisishunt. And what you can see here on the left, that's a typical, this is a real patient, a before and after. And you can see this shunt. This is what happens when people have shunts. They have these big bulging valves sticking out. If you're an older person, if you're somebody with a receding hairline, if you're bald, you're walking around and yes, you have your shunt. It's helping your brain and your outcomes are better. But you know what? You have this big cosmetic defect. It can also become an issue because they break through the skin. The infection rate's much higher. So this is the same thing on the left where it's just sunken in. And it's a really simple concept. This is one of the first patients that we did. And you can see this large valve is just kind of completely sunken in. It really makes a huge difference for patients. I mean, it is a game changer, but it's a simple thing. It never would have happened without a plastic surgeon talking to a neurosurgeon and then taking it to the patients, taking it to the customer, taking it to the consumer, and the consumer is all of us. So this is a school teacher in Southern New Jersey, lovely woman. You can see that she has, her hair is a little receding on the right side. With a shunt, what you would be seeing is a big bulb. You'd see a big incision there and you'd see a big bulge sticking out. She had a shunt. I put a shunt in her about 18 months, almost 2 years ago now. You cannot see anything. And this is her talking about this. This changed her life. It changed her life from what we were able to do for her for treating her normal pressure hydrocephalus. But more importantly now, she's back to her life. She doesn't have any self-consciousness. And it's just, it really is a game changer. So what else can we do? These are the plastic procedures that Dr. Gordon came up with longevity. This is called a clear fit. So when we make cranial defects and remove parts of the brain, bone, this is a clear piece of acrylic, patented technology, cranioplasty, where we can put in, but we can see through it. Why is that important? Well, when we're done operating, if there's gonna be a fluid collection under there, I can see it right up until I'm closing skin. In a traditional model, as soon as that's going on, they're there another 30 minutes, that fluid's collecting. We don't know it until the patient wakes up. But here's where it's brilliant. We can take an ultrasound at the bedside a year later and auscultate through it and see if there's a brain tumor regrowth, see if our bypass that we did is still patent, see if there's a fluid collection there without sending the patient to CAT scan to MRI, and we can start doing this in the field emergently. But here's really exciting stuff. So this was the first case ever in the world that was done by our colleagues at Johns Hopkins. And this is a young child who had a cranioplasty, was involved in a horrible motor vehicle accident and had their bone replaced. And this is a sensor. This is an electronic sensor that you see on the lower right-hand corner. And what this is doing is measuring the pressure. So when this child is home, sleeping in their bed and wakes up with a bad headache, mom's calling the hospital. And from the hospital, the doctor can literally pull this up and see what the pressure in that child's brain is a state away. That's next technology. That's thinking outside the box. That's using engineering, IT technology, surgery, and common sense. This is really exciting stuff. We could have done this 10 years ago, but those things never came together. So this is the before and after. You can see, incredible cosmetic defect, but this young boy now has a pressure monitor in his head. So mom doesn't have to guess anymore when he has a headache, when he's not feeling well. Is he nauseous? Is it because he has the flu, or is it because the pressure in his head's increased again? And for any mother or father or parent or patient out there who has to live with this, you understand how this is a game changer. And this, as I promised you in the beginning, and I'm keeping my promise, we're coming full circle. So remember our smartphones? Remember those slides about evolution of the telephone? Well, here you go. This is that smartphone technology. That's the iOS system. That's for you, Graham. Who he loves whenever I incorporate the technology here into our skulls. So we literally can now put a computer chip in the skull with you saw that one gentleman with a huge electrode coming out of his head with wires coming out, and many patients now that have stimulators for DBS. They have battery packs. This is now all seamlessly put into the patient's skull. And you can see what we can do here. It's literally not just a computer chip, but a battery, a rechargeable battery. And so what I want to kind of round up here with, and then, and again, today, this is our first start. So I want everybody to get more and more comfortable. Start putting your questions in. Anybody that has a question, Tom Kurtz, who's our moderator here, is going to be able to see it and we can incorporate it. So go to that question and answer session in that blue box, ask your questions. And also in the chat room, keep things going and challenge the speakers, challenge me. This is that connectivity that we want to get with you. But, what I want to kind of round off here with is imagine now the piece of a place. Imagine a home. Imagine a United Nations for neurosciences. Imagine a Switzerland for neurosciences with no flags being hung so that, we have a bunch of data at Hospital X with, tumor cells that we're harvesting to come up with a cure for GBM, and Hospital Y is doing the same thing, competing with us. Well, the problem is there's not that much tissue out there. So what if we all work together? What if we all had one place where everybody that has an idea, that has a device, that has something that can help benefit our patients comes together without a flag, without a banner, without a color team to work together? So this has been our dream for the last decade. And what we want to do is have a hospital where we're bringing the brightest and the best together under one roof, and a place that really doesn't have any barriers. And I would, and I have been for the last 4 years challenging people that, well, you can't do that. You can't have industry in a hospital. You can't have different doctors from different places around the country coming without privileges and this and that. Well, guess what? Yes, you can. And there are different forms of models of this around the country. So, every aspect of neurosciences and neurologic disease will be treated and focused on, but it's going to be departmentless. GNI is a departmentless institution. And that's just a brilliant concept that our architect came up with. Somebody who has no background in actual healthcare. And when we were designing this center, this mecca, he said, the concept that I'm hearing from all of you is departmentless. And that's exactly what we need to be thinking about. That's what we need to be thinking about in healthcare. Forget about departments, forget about divisions. Let's talk about what the disease is and bring every single healthcare provider together to treat that. So I don't know if we can get our slide up here this is our team. These are a brilliant architects based out of Los Angeles called Canon Design. This is really the architects of the concept of the idea of doing this. And we've worked with them for the last 3 years for them to understand our vision and then put it into a reality. And our next slide here, what we've decided the name should be is the Philadelphia Neurologic Institute, not the GNI Institute, not this is a partnership of every hospital that GNI is part of. This is a partnership with every industry provider, not just nationally, but globally, to be able to come to a place without any barriers to say, I have an idea to cure this disease. And I can tell you as recently as a month ago, we had dinner with Elon Musk's folks in New York City to talk about bringing Neuralink and some of those visionaries to the hospital, because they're realizing that it's not so easy. Doing something like changing neurosciences and using artificial intelligence, like some of the stuff that I just showed, is not as easy as making an electronic car. There's a lot of different factors when you're dealing with human beings and regulations and hospital systems and personalities and doctors. So they sought us out. And it's not us, it's everybody on this call. So it's a really exciting concept. And if you look at the design of this, again, going back to what was designed by Canon Studios, this is what this is going to look like. And there are 3 towers. And it's really important to understand this concept. So if you see the inside of the lobby on this slide, when you walk in, first of all, this is nothing new. I mean, the concept of, if you build the 4 seasons, everyone's going to come. No, You can't just build a pretty hospital. We live that. It doesn't work that way. And it shouldn't work that way. You should have a hospital that looks like a hotel. When you're sick and you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you've been diagnosed with an aneurysm, a brain tumor, your life and your family's life is upside down. And the last thing you need is to have rude staff. The last thing you need to do is be in a city where you're trying to find parking and going in traffic that you've never been in before. What you need to do is walk into a place like you do when you go into a spa, into a hotel. That's step one. That's just the price of entry. But if you look at the lobby here, this glass lobby, there's 3 different elevators at the base, but at the top, everything is connected. So what these, on this next slide, what you see from the top down is 3 towers. And the one tower is a hospital. It's a traditional hospital, but without barriers, without bureaucracy. It's a hospital with the best doctors from around the country. It's a hospital with cutting edge ICU, cutting edge operating rooms, with partnering with the best in industry. And we are really far along and really excited so that industry can come in and not right off the bat here, well, we need 50% of whatever you're going to do and this and that. Let industry do what they do, but let's have control of that from a patient perspective. Industry wants that, doctors want that, and patients need that because we're not going to advance the bar without that. So that hospital is going to have cutting edge technology in it, the best doctors, operating rooms, a 50-bed rehab, so that when a patient comes in with a brain injury after surgery, after a stroke, they don't have to get shipped off somewhere where there's a complete, again, disconnect between services, between providers. They're going to be there. If there's a question about what an incision looks like, there's a family member that's confused or the patient has a question, we're going to be able to walk across the street, walk across the hall and see that patient. The other tower is going to be education and research. This is where it's going to be the next generation. And we're really excited to be working with some of our academic partners, particularly Drexel, Widener, who's right there on campus. And what we're going to be doing is not just treating medical students. We keep focusing on medical students. And I learned a lot from my wife, who's been involved in education, and said, you guys think about the medical students. Yes, that's important. But what about nursing? What about engineering students? So all that really great stuff that I just showed you, that, you know who invented that? You know who came up with that? Engineers. So ask a typical engineering student how much time they get. Someone that wants to go into medical, biomechanical engineering to do that stuff, to come up with the next greatest thing. They don't get to see patients. They don't talk to doctors. They don't even understand the disease because they don't have access to it. So how about if we bring engineering students in that are focused on this? How about we bring in students that, you know what, maybe they don't want to go into academics and be a professor in biochemistry, but they want to work for Stryker or they want to work for Medtronic. Well, guess what? They're going to come here and those companies are going to be there and they're going to be able to collaborate together. And that next cure is going to be some young person, he or she is going to be able to say, wow, I have an idea. What I learned during my training, I'm going to take this to the next level. That's where we need to be with education. And what I'm really proud of is this is not in Princeton. This is not in Society Hill, Philadelphia. This is walking distance to Chester. This is right off of I-95. This is going to serve all of our communities, which G&I has been beyond proud to be doing from day one. When we left Philadelphia and we left the academic center, 13 years ago now, our cities and our communities that we serve and proudly serve are Trenton, our Camden, our Chester. These are the communities that need this, but it's also a center where we can collaborate all these things together to be able to teach some of these young kids out there what healthcare is all about, what being a nurse is about, what being a medical assistant about, what being a brain surgeon is about, or a cardiothoracic surgeon is about, and fostering them and partnering with our academic institutions to do that. So it's a really innovative concept. It's completely outside the box. And what I would say is that it is not only doable, but we're starting this next month. That's how far along we are. And I cannot emphasize enough, this is not, there's no denomination here. This is not a place where you're going to see any logo of a hospital, a university, of all that. Now, that being said, we're really proud to be partnering with the best hospitals anywhere. Crozier Health, Robert Wood Johnson Hamilton, Holy Redeemer, Prime Health System, Mercy Health System, St. Mary's, Mercy Fitzgerald. Everyone out there knows these are all wonderful hospitals. So let's stop looking at each other as we're competitors. And I'm not just talking about at a hospital business level. I'm talking about nursing. I'm talking about ICU. I'm talking about OR. I'm talking about triage. There's more than enough out there for all of us. And if we all band together and we work together and we keep the patients in mind, nothing but success is going to come from that. And I see there's a couple questions up here. Tom, if you can read that for me. Is patient population in, not only is it nationwide, it's international. So I've been the last 2 years with our developers here, Flagler Design, Flagler Development outside of Miami. We've literally traveled around the world. It's sad to me that, when I was a kid, and one of the reasons I just was enamored about being a doctor and wanted to be was if somebody was sick anywhere in the world, you came to the United States for care. DeBakey, Cush, the leaders in the world that were coming up with the things that I was talking about, they flew here for this care. Americans now are leaving the shores and going to other places. And so this is a place that is open globally, and it is open nationwide. And Global Neurosciences Institute gets quite a bit of second opinions and patients from outside of not just the tri-state region, but nationally. All the time. And some of the more rewarding things are not a typical second opinion site where, hey, send me your MRIs, and if there's something I can operate on, I'll talk to you, but if not, you're never going to hear from me again. I can tell you just 2 days ago, we got a desperate login from a family at a hospital in another state, a faraway state, and they were going to pull the plug on their 50-year-old father. And they weren't getting answers. They were not being allowed to get a second opinion, and they were able to download films. And we were able to, if nothing else, talk to these families and give them some help of how to navigate the system, to answer some of the questions. And this isn't a dig on any other system. Listen, it's a crazy time, and everybody out there knows that between COVID and the chaos of everything. But we can't lose sight of our patients. So yes, we're going to expand that. And this hospital, I keep getting told, and rightly so, we shouldn't call it a hospital. We shouldn't call it a center. We shouldn't call it, it's an innovation center. It's a departmentless, innovation center for healthcare, for neurosciences. But it's about 6 miles from the Philadelphia International Airport. And there's a reason for that. It's off of I-95, connecting 3 states. There's a reason for that. We're not looking to compete. We don't want to compete. We want to take competition away. But what we want to do is break the barriers and have a home for everybody to come to. And yes, the patient first and foremost, but also other healthcare systems, other industry leaders, and small startups. Again, the next, Medtronic, Stryker, Alta Spine, another a gem. We're working with these people one-on-one to say, come here, work with us, and let us, the physicians, the healthcare providers, show you what our problems are. Help us solve these problems. Now, it may sound trite and common sense. It doesn't happen. When we were in academics, it was mind-boggling to me that we would see this stuff and we'd find out about it secondhand. And the minute you wanted to collaborate or even have them come to, oh, we can't do that. We have to make safeguards so there's no conflicts. And I want to be very clear in this ecosystem across the board, no doctor can have ownership. No doctor can get a penny from these companies. They cannot. It's a conflict. And I know the docs don't like that, and I understand it, but there's a conflict. We have to be transparent to our patients. We have to be transparent to our partners that the end goal is coming up with cures, is coming up with advancements. And I will tell you, in the neurosciences, no one has all the answers. but I think everyone understands that there's a lot of answers we don't have. And if we come into this ecosystem together and we all work together for a cure, let me tell you something, we're going to be what we were in healthcare in this country and beyond. It's the model for the next 3 days of this conference. It mimics what we want to be doing and what we need all of your help out there to be doing. So, to give you an idea of who is GNI, what is GNI, and this isn't a plug for, GNI, and you'll notice, I'm not talking about any one center or any one. GNI, in my mind, incorporates everybody. GNI, in my mind, incorporates everybody out there. Somebody that doesn't even know what GNI is. You're part of GNI if you want to be part of GNI. If you have an idea, if you have something that can contribute, you're part of GNI. And what that is today for a patient, it's coming in and sitting down with Natalie Goffman and her team from neuropharmacology. Neuropharmacology didn't exist until Natalie made it exist. And she brought her expertise in from pharmacy and said, there's a lot of really, I'm kind of out in an island here. And, she rounded with us in the ICU. We talked to her. We were, God forbid, especially us neurosurgeons who tend to be a little bit arrogant and think we know everything, I don't understand this, help us. And today, any physician, family doctor, neurologist, I don't care, that tells you that they understand every pharmacokinetic, they understand every drug that's out there for the disease, they're ignorant. And I'll speak for myself. So having someone like Natalie, who's seeing the patients with us and is going over the medications and not just clicking on boxes on EMR and saying, I did my job, I'm going to get my $10, but really listening to them saying, we're going to make this change in your medications. And you know what? I'm going to call you back in a week and see how you're doing. But if there's an issue, you call me back. And putting a team in place for that, does it make business sense? No. If I walked into a major system, I'll leave it at that, in a million years, they wouldn't go for it because they would be looking at the bottom line, what's the return, this, that, the other thing. Well, let's look around the city. That business model approach to healthcare, not only is it horrible for patients, horrible for providers, it's not even that great business sense if you look at it. But also seeing if you have Parkinson's disease, the neurologist, Jill Farmer and her team, Dr. Adam Sarkar, the functional neurosurgeon and his team, working together and coming up with a plan and not, again, being, in departments. There's some more questions and we're kind of bundling them together, but again, please bring the questions up and you'll get more comfortable as the day goes on. The impact on healthcare for COVID, the impact on healthcare delivery. Great question. The answer is, this is my answer, by the way. All these are my opinions, so I want to be clear on that. But the impact on healthcare from COVID, it's whatever we decide it's going to be. If we decide that we're going to minimize that impact, and I'm not talking about now, we've got to get through some tough times. And because of everybody out there, we've gotten through a lot of tough times. And where we are now, I think is, I'm really optimistic. But the impact on it, I think, is going to become less and less and less. Why? Because we're going to do what we always do. We're going to innovate and we're going to work around it. And these are the types of things that these models, along with everybody else, where we can start trying different things. Because, I know everybody thought that there was a playbook for COVID and that you could just open up a book and say, oh, okay, well, we're going to do this. And if you don't follow this, you've seen the commercials, everything else. And this isn't a political statement at all. But you know what? This is unprecedented. Nobody knew how to deal with this globally. So we're going to figure it out. And we have the best system to be able to do that. But we've got to get out of our own way. We've got to get out of our silos. And I mean, big silos where our systems, and again, I mentioned some of our partners. I am so excited about what we're going to be able to do. I mean, we've been working with all of you out there at these different centers and hospital systems. And I know there's some administrators on this call. I mean, it has been nothing short of miraculous to be able to work together, to come up with different models, and to be able to have a real team approach of the doctors, administration, the providers at all levels, from EMS to medical assistants, technologists, everybody working together. There's another question about a palliative care unit. Yes, there will be a palliative care unit. Another thing that we need to do much better, and that goes part and parcel with mental health. And let me tell you the model too, to be really clear. We're not owning any of this. Everybody, the beauty of this model is everyone's coming in and they're doing what they do. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing. That's what their excellence is. And we're going to let them own that. But we're going to make them be responsible for it, just like we're going to be responsible for what we do as physicians and healthcare providers. But we've got to bring in people that can show that they're going to do something different, that they're going to be effective, and that we're going to set metrics for them. You know, this is an evolving system. If you can't meet the bar and we're not doing this, well, then we're going to switch that out. But the partnership right now is really, really exciting. And it's going to be a true democratic process. And it really is something beyond exciting. So we are, I promise we're going to get to everybody's questions. And I really want to start, you know, I wanted this morning to be a little bit more provocative just so that we can kind of get the tone going. And just to be clear, as we move on, the format is going to be moving forward, different sessions, and there's going to be 2, 3, 4 different people who are going to be having a conversation style and a conversation with you. So it's going to be as good as you make it by asking questions and engaging in that conversation. It's not going to be a bunch of PowerPoints. I'm the one who was, you know, did the most droning with PowerPoints to really set the tone of what these different things look like. But the PowerPoints are going to be really more clinical case scenarios, but then a discussion, a 30,000-foot discussion. And our session after this is industry. So if you were, you know, engaged with some of the technology you saw, you're going to talk to the people that invented it on this next session. And then after that, we have Danielle Brown, Randy Faber, and Eleni Brecht, who are 3 world-class PAs who are going to go over a basic neurologic exam with a live patient. So we're going to go through NIH, we're going to go through these things, and we're going to do it slowly so you can ask questions. You can ask them questions and say, well, wait, go back. How do you check for extraocular motion? That is the beauty of this format. And then we're going to go down to TPA complications. You know, everyone talks about TPA, time windows, data. Not a lot of data. What we're going to talk to is what happens when the you-know-what hits the fan after IV TPA is given. And our pharmacist is going to be on that. Our stroke director and division director of cerebrovascular, Mandy Binning, is going to be on that. And then we're going to round up with the neuro ED and the command center. So with that, welcome everybody. We're beyond excited to be doing this. And as you can see, you know, we pushed the envelope even with this. This is live. Sorry for the little bit of glitches this morning, but we have it all figured out. Huge thank you to Graham Thompson, Ascension Studios that put all this together. I feel like our place here is like a Oprah Winfrey set. We got like 5 different cameras and everything. That's all Ascension Studios. Rachel Donington, Kim Eves, Tom, everybody that's made this happen so far. So sit tight, start thinking of questions, make it provocative, and we will see you in the next session.